For more, I'm joined by tonight's Hardball Roundtable, Ginger Gibson, political correspondent for Reuters, Chris Wilson, Republican pollster, and Jamal Simmons, Democratic strategist. I get the sense that for whatever reason, Trump doesn't want to fight this week. He's given up. He can't win the court fight. He can complain about it, but he can't win it. The wall, he's not going to get the money. And what else? The foundation's dead.
He's headed to Mar-a-Lago for the holidays. I think that there's a...
What happened to that fighter we saw with Chuck Schumer sitting in the White House?
Donald Trump cares a whole lot about the public relations campaign that comes with being president and what his supporters think he's doing. And he was showing his supporters that he was willing to fight. He doesn't have to in the fight. He just had to say that he's willing to do so.
Is this some sort of pick and roll kind of play here, like in basketball or something, and then you roll around the back? I mean, I don't know what the right play was. This was a play then, in other words. Did he pretend he was going to fight for the cameras, brought the cameras in, show his fighting spirit, and then rolled?
Well, we'll see what happens. I don't think this is. I don't think it's over yet. I think.
You think he's going to get his $5 billion for the wall this week?
I think he's going to get the $5 billion for the wall. I think.
You do?
No, I don't. I was repeating the question and trying to be thoughtful before I just jumped in and said no. But no, I don't. But I do think there is. I think to characterize the entire week as a loss is a little bit of a misnomer. I mean, you can say
the Family Foundation found to be a criminal operation.
I was going to go to the chief of staff instead of the Family Foundation, just to be clear in terms of talking about. I think
you didn't get the guy he wanted.
That's what's been reported. But I can tell you there are reports of people who have received offers that aren't true. And Mick Mulvaney has been a top choice.
Wait a minute. He was looking for heavyweights like Wayne Berman, and he ends up with Mulvaney. I mean, he was going to get washed at experts. Why did he
I don't think it's fair to characterize Mulvaney as a non-expert. Mulvaney's done a good job.
He didn't get a cowboy, and he didn't get a heavyweight.
He got somebody who's got a good relation with Congress, and going into the next 2 years,
he's moonlighting in this job.
He also won't take the job for longer than some temporary period of time.
The president says, "I'm giving you the best job I got to give, please," and the guy says, "Well, I'll give you a couple months."
I don't know. I've just never heard of a situation where people don't want White House chief of staff, right? I mean, it's the number one job in Washington other than the elected officials to be White House chief of staff. And
it's better than VP.
People fight for that job. It is I remember times in the Clinton administration, people fight to be White House chief of staff. I think the president's a paper tiger, and I think he got caught in the shredder when the wheels of justice and the wheels of Congress began to grind against him. And he just doesn't know how to deal in that environment in this town.
Ginger, how long can he tease on the wall? Because if he does, at some point people ask for pictures of it. Can we see the wall?
They keep showing those little prototypes, right, that they've built there on the border. But a little piece. We have a little piece. I think that he's trying to make the case that that there's wall there and that it's building. How long does he argue? I mean, in a few weeks, Democrats control the House.
You know, in the 50s,
blame them.
I know I'm old, but in the 50s, you used to get your dad a Stetson hat, but you would give him a little plastic hat. And then he would go to to the store and get the real one. I mean, he keeps giving people, Jamal, he keeps giving his voters that little plastic hat and said, there's really a big Stetson hat here.
But here's the thing. His voters don't really seem to care. You know why, Chris? Because ultimately Donald Trump was elected for one reason, which was to be the guardian of 1950s white America, frankly. And I think those people who want him to do that, they trust him on that. He's their warrior, and they don't care about anything else that happens because they trust the guy.
Yeah, see, I disagree with that. I think it is going to be an issue if the wall is not built. It was the number one promise in the Republican primaries, and I don't.
How's he going to do it with the Democratic House?
It's going to be a real challenge. That was why I actually think the Mulvaney pick, if he comes in and plays that role on a permanent basis, is actually a solid one because he does have a good relationship with both sides of the aisle in the House, and it gives him the ability to negotiate in the sense that the last two have not given him.
You think he's going to get the wall?
I think it gives him a better chance from a negotiation.
From Nancy Pelosi?
Can we talk character? Let's talk character.
Justice reform.
This isn't a church, but let's talk character. He puts together a foundation, a charitable foundation. He gives money to get votes out in Iowa. He builds this big fountain next to his hotel. He pays for the penalty for having too high a flagpole at Mar-a-Lago. It has nothing to do with charitable purposes, but he puts his kid's name all through it. What do you make of a guy who does that?
I make a guy and I think that the way that we view the Trump Foundation as some just slush fund probably doesn't acknowledge the way Trump views the Trump Foundation.
So he felt sorry for the lousy shape of the fountain next to the plaza, so he gives it $250,000.
He thought he was doing good things, you know? I don't think that he thought he was engaged in some type of activity that now the New York Attorney General describes as criminal. I think he thought he was doing what rich people with money to throw at fountains fountains do, and they put their kid's name
3
on it.
coins in a fountain. Anyway, there is, however, one bit of good news for the president of the country this week. In a rare moment of bipartisanship last night, the U.S. Senate passed a comprehensive criminal justice reform bill. Look at this number, 87-12. Its supporters say it will make the system fair, reduce prison overcrowding, and actually save the taxpayers money. The White House, including the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, is getting praise from across the board.
Jared Kushner played a key role in this. I called him last night and thanked him. He did more to line up Republicans and the right on this issue than anyone else, and he deserves credit for it.
Chris Wilson, what good is it doing and for whom?
Well, I think the key thing here is what this does is it gives kind of a blueprint for the next couple of years. And that's what I was trying to refer to whenever I talked about the ability to work together and bring Mulvaney in, is maybe not about that specific issue on the wall, but for this, it does show what can be done. And I think it's pretty remarkable that an issue that does lend itself so much to campaign attacks on both sides, Republicans in the primary against Democrats in the general election, got that sort of a vote. And the fact that Kushner played a role, I think, is important. And hopefully it gives us the opportunity to see how Congress can come together, work together on an issue that was clearly a problem that both sides agreed in and accomplish something.
I think this is a great stark contrast to the wall, which is this is a policy position that years have been spent changing the minds of Americans and of their elected officials to get such overwhelming.
Well, talking about 3 strikes you're out and stuff like that.
And when he's not built that type of consensus on the wall, it will always be divisive.
Jamal, usually Republicans, conservatives are complaining that they have too many good TV sets in prison, that they have barbells they shouldn't have. They shouldn't be able to do workouts. They're not in there to making lighter sentences. It's not a big Republican dream.
Well, that was true when there were mostly black and brown people from the cities that were going to jail. I think what we've seen in the last few years, there are a lot of suburbanites, a lot of rural kids who are getting caught up in the opioid crisis, who are getting picked up and put into prisons. And now Republicans are starting to figure out that maybe things need to find a way to do something else other than just house people in jail. And frankly, it's also costing a lot of money. So if you got some budget problems, you want to give away tax cuts, you got to cut back on something. Maybe prisons are the place.
I also wonder, it's like Shawshank, once you've served your time and paid a price, say 10 or X many years, what is served by 30 and 40 years? Jamal?
I would say nothing. I would say, especially for someone who's a nonviolent offender, we got to find a way. Paul Butler, who comes on this network a lot, talks about restorative justice. There are other things to do with people who have had affronts in the criminal justice system other than house them for a bunch of years and teach them how to be professional criminals.
Well, the Republicans have come a long way from Willie Horton. Anyway,
I do think
it's a long way from Willie
It's
Horton.
important to look at who led the charge on this for Republicans. This wasn't like a moderate consensus. This came from the right. This was like one of the big leaders was Ken Cuccinelli, the head of the Senate Conservative Fund, former Attorney General of Virginia, who was leading this. The Koch Foundation. I mean, this was people from the conservative side of the Republican Party who took a stand on it. I think
Why
it's an
does the Koch
important aspect
Foundation
of it.
care about prison reform?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with
workforce.
It does have to do with workforce. I think it's ideological in its nature as well.
It's philosophical.
Their main concern is making money.
This didn't happen overnight.
Suburban kids are getting picked up.
I don't think
this is not an overnight policy change. This isn't a simple 1-and-1 and we're going to get some votes off of it. I mean, I think a lot of minds got changed.
That's right.
Let's talk more about it in the weeks ahead. We ought to understand what the Senate just did. It'd be nice to know.